let's get on with the business of the coffee chat, and it is in session. Joining me is Slindelo Masigane. I think you've just dropped your mic. I hope.
I'm just like, oh man,
I hope we can
we've
hear
had a
you,
great
okay?
start to our morning.
Apparently you are audible.
Am I?
So we can hear you.
Great. Oh, fantastic.
Good morning to
the
you.
The batteries are still there. Morning, Xoli. How are you?
Welcome to the Coffee Chat in 2020.
I know, this is my first time here. Thank you so much. In 2020, new decade.
Yeah,
Loving
indeed.
it. Loving your studios, by the way.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
No.
Did a good job, did I?
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Nandi?
Are you getting sick of seeing me yet?
No.
Okay,
no.
good.
You and I are partners.
We are.
Thank you. All right, guys, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
The front page of the Mercury. Slindelo, let's begin with the headline that is on the side of the main headline. And it's to my right, if I look at this paper, and it talks about Eskom. Eskom demands 16% tariff hike. We know that the power utility was in court yesterday.
Yeah.
At stake here is Eskom's finances.
Yep.
And
Energy generation.
And the fight that it has with NERSA, the regulator. The implications for NERSA is their credibility.
Yes, and independence.
Yes,
exactly. Which is what's really going to be crucial in this particular case. But I think it's quite telling for consumers that, I mean, to add insult to injury, Eskom wants more money for us to pour into this utility that is seemingly not going forward. It's had a number of leadership changes in just 2 years alone, and it seems that our president and his new team is also seemingly struggling to get it right. But what we know from this particular court case is that Eskom is saying that if it doesn't receive this 16% tariff hike, that we're going to have a serious energy crisis, as if we're not in one already. Exactly, as if we're not in one already. I think what we're seeing as what is being labelled as load shedding will eventually soon become rolling blackouts. And I think what we're seeing coming from NERSA's papers is that Eskom is claiming that NERSA is using a 23 billion cash injection that they received in order to calculate exactly what the tariff increases should be. But what we're going to see moving forward in the matter is that NERSA is saying that we haven't actually used that 23 billion cash injection. So what is Eskom essentially wanting consumers to pay the 16% tariff hike for, if essentially the issues are with regards to management of the utility as well as issues around energy generation, and the fact that they can't seemingly get municipalities as well to be able to pay them back. So I think NERSA is essentially fighting for the consumer, as well as their credibility, as well as you said, their independence.
Indeed, and we have to disappoint you, though, because the power utility is saying this week there isn't any expectation of load shedding.
Listen, from now
and by the way, last night,
everything Eskom says with a pinch of salt.
I completely agree with that.
You guys are such skeptics. Okay, all right, I'm going to leave the two of you skeptics. Nandi, still on that front page of the Mercury, the main headline there, Gumede graft probe soars. The state says that the total allegation or total fraud allegation has grown by 181 million rand.
From 208 million to just under 390 million rand.
That's nearly 400 million.
That's crazy. And also, I don't know, Steve, what is the explanation for the sudden increase in that total?
So what we understand is that, of course, these allegations against Gumede and around 15 others have been going on for around a year in terms of prosecution and allegations of tender corruption in the solid waste tender. And what we understand is that, of course, there was a raid in October last year by the asset forfeiture against the eThekwini municipality's supply chain management unit, where they further gathered more evidence, and that is seemingly what the prosecution is using in order to come up with this new number now of around 390 million rand. And I understand that our colleague Siphamandla Goge did, of course, sit down with the former mayor, who, of course, has to this date, denied all these allegations against her, as well as her co-accused. I think it was quite interesting in the parcel that Siphamandla left for us, where we hear Zandile in the beginning of the package saying, "Senzeni now, what have we done?" You know, and I think in terms of this matter, where I do agree with the former mayor is that at this point we should be seeing something that is looking like a trial, where we're going to eventually prosecute.
Her problem is that she says she's not been presented with any charges.
I don't know how, because you are sitting in court, you are before the courts of South Africa facing corruption charges. So essentially, we need to see some steps from the prosecution in actually starting this process instead of constantly delaying it, because from what I understand from the legal system is that once a matter makes it to the courts, it
means you're charged with something.
It means you're charged with something, one, and it means the prosecution has reasonable prospects, what they believe are reasonable prospects of success in prosecuting you for those charges. So I
just
think we need
to whet both you and the viewers' appetite. At 7, we're going to be speaking to the spokesperson of the ANC in KZN, because this has also political implications.
Exactly.
The supporters of Gumede made some really tough allegations against...
I think a lot of the issues we're seeing around Eskom, around issues of, leadership in KZN are all political, they're all factional, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it unfolds in this new decade.
You covered a story yesterday about a paramedic who now suffers from depression.
Severe depression. If I can just briefly take you back, this particular paramedic is around 47 years old, and she's been in the service for around 20 years. And she says she's described essentially a culture of victimization and intimidation within the Johannesburg EMS services, saying that, once you essentially put up a grievance of some sort, or you complain about your superiors, you become isolated, you are bullied, essentially to a point where you don't want to come to work. She does not want to come to work anymore. And where her issue began is that her supervisor seemingly did not want to approve her leave that she had applied for, and then leave that was also due to her in terms of their procedures and administrations around, they call it anniversary leave. So she started working for EMS services in January 20 years ago. So every year in January, she's entitled to some kind of some leave days just to celebrate that particular moment. So she was denied that. That then further escalated to the fact that she made a formal grievance against her supervisor. This grievance was not attended to for months on end, essentially then isolating her from work, because it seems that what she had been complaining about around her victimization by the supervisor, and the fact that she was calling out her supervisor on not being fair in that he treats her differently to the rest of her co-workers. So if she arrives just 5 minutes late, she will be scorned. But
she became allowed to speak up.
She's not allowed to speak up. So she had mentioned that, listen, there's a colleague of ours who always arrives to work intoxicated, but you don't do anything about that. That particular colleague got wind of that and punched her at work, she says. Whoa. So that then, of course, resulted in an assault case, which both the grievance and the assault case have not been attended to in a year. And now we see that from around September last year, she stopped receiving her salary. So now she is not only depressed, but drowning in debt. And so we've been looking for answers from the EMS services, and they just have told us that the matter is sub judice. It's with the bargaining council, and that internal processes are underway.
The toxic consequences, or the consequences of a toxic
environment.
Environment. Yes. Nandi, you unfortunately are not going to be able to give us any sport, because this lady here has decided to take all of the airtime.
So much for being partners. So much for being partners.
But you are going to be with us for sports, so you're going to tell us sports anyway.
All right.
All right.